In this video, we're going to demonstrate how to define a constant top and bottom elevation when we're cutting our cross sections. Currently in the program, when we create our cross section named boundaries, what it does is it comes to the 3D view and it looks at all the 3D elements in the 3D view, and it takes the highest elevation of those 3D elements at the station that we're looking at, and it takes that as the top elevation. It then adds the top clearance, and then it rounds it up to the nearest elevation datum spacing interval there. And then that's our top elevation. It does the bottom the same way. It finds the minimum elevation, adds the bottom clearance, and then rounds it down to the nearest datum spacing interval. Just to demonstrate that real quick, we're going to create some cross-section name boundaries with no top or bottom clearance here at the beginning of our project. And we're going to cut some sheets to look at what elevations are placed here. Okay, so it took us to the last cross-section that it created, but this is a good one where we can see that it's taken the bottom elevation among all those, and that's probably the bottom of this ditch, and it's gone down, and we had a datum elevation of 1 foot, so it took us to 168 at the bottom. And then it takes the highest elevation, which is probably up here on the surface, and it goes up. We're probably at 173 there for our top elevation. So let's say, for example, we wanted all of our cross sections to start down at 165 and end up here at 190, for example. So how would we do that? Well, to do that, we're going to switch back over to our design model. And what we're going to do is we're going to create two terrains, one at the top elevation, one at the bottom elevation, real quick, using some geometry tools and the terrain tools. And we'll use those terrains, then we'll display those in the 3D model when they're created, and it'll use it for our cross sections. And to do that, we're going to use the geometry tools. I'm just going to create two features, one on each side of the alignment for the top surface, and then two features for the bottom surface. And to do that, I'm going to just run the single offset entire element command. And I'm going to use some do not contour or do not plot feature definitions so that we don't see these reference surfaces in our terrains. So I'm going to create one set of features here, and then I'm going to do that again for the, we'll use those two as the top, and I'll make the bottom surface ones a little bit wider. Okay, we have the features that we're going to put in our surface. The last thing we need to do is just come to the element profiles and choose this profile by constant elevation. And we're going to give these two features here at the top, we're going to give them an elevation of 190. So we'll pick them, reset. I'm going to type in 190, place that. Then we're going to do that one more time and choose the bottom two features, reset, and give those elevations of 155. So as soon as those show up over my 3D view, I know they're good. That's what we're going to use to define top and bottom. So I'm going to now add those to the two separate terrains. So I'm going to do terrain from elements. And I'm going to use a feature definition that's a do not plot or do not construct, kind of a construction class element. So our name for our top surface is going to be top. And I'm going to pick these two features here. Reset, and those are going to be boundary and no edge method. And so there we can see that it did create a DTM for us. And now let's go through that and create terrain from elements again for our bottom surface. We're going to pick the outside two features. Okay, now that we have our two DTMs, we're good to go to run the Create Cross-Section Drawing Boundaries tool again. And I'm going to keep the existing drawing boundaries there just so that we can see the difference with the new ones that are created. We'll see that they're much larger in elevation. So we're going to go to our drawing production, place name boundary, and I'm going to keep everything the same in this dialog. I'm going to pick my path element. And we're going to do the same stationing, which was 5100 to 5400. top and bottom clearance is 0. That means the top should fall right where that terrain was, and bottom should fall right on the bottom terrain. So we'll go ahead and place those name boundaries. And before we create the drawings, we can see that we do have much larger name boundaries created this time. And let's go ahead and hit OK. And when our sections actually get created, we can see that the bottom elevation is going to be 155 here. The top elevation is 190, so it is using those two terrains to define the top and bottom. And as we hover over the top, we can actually see that underneath the axis line, there is actually the terrain that's being drawn there. So we want to make sure that we have a feature definition that draws that terrain on a do not plot or on a construction class level. But we have been able now to define the top and bottom elevation. And then if we need to do any kind of edits to, maybe we do have some elevation change that's going on in our road or in our levee or in our road. If we do need to change the elevation that's are in those cross sections, then it is pretty simple. It's just a matter of changing the profiles that we created on those lines. So I'm going to come in and choose Open Profile Model and pick one of my, make sure my 2D view is active when I do that. Do Open Profile Model, pick one of my two elements that define the terrain elevation. So if I do find that I do need to change the elevation of those top and bottom cross sections, I can click on the manipulator there and just type in a new elevation. Let's say 195, and that'll move it up. Or I can, put it in at just any elevation that I need. And the next time I cut my drawing name boundaries, as soon as I update the profile here, it updates the surface automatically. If I needed to do some kind of step along there, so we wanted this bottom portion of our levee to be at one elevation and the top portion of the levee at another elevation, then I could, any profile editing that I do in here will affect the surfaces. So for example, I could come in and insert a vertex here, and then insert another vertex in that profile here and create my step and have this lower portion at one lower elevation and the upper portion at one higher elevation. So since any edits that take place here in the profile are automatically changing the terrain because the terrain is built off of those elements, then I can fully control what's going on with my cross-section name boundaries just by editing the profiles here.